Welcome to the Better Two podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Marla Mase. And I have to say this right off the bat that if you have any dealings with suicide or mental health issues, we do discuss both topics at length in this episode. Marla lost her daughter to suicide, and we cover that, but we also cover her music and we cover who she was and her struggles. So it's a very poignant episode. And with this being Suicide Awareness Month, I think it's an important thing to share. So tune in. Hi, Marla. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Donna. How are you?
I'm
Am I
good.
pronouncing your name, Donna?
Donna. That's fine.
Donna. Donna.
hmm
Okay.
It's fine.
I'm doing
So
well.
that's good. That's good. So you have an interesting story. You are here kind of, there's two folds here. And we talked a little bit off camera. I kind of know what you're going through because I live with, after my mom committed suicide, I experienced my grandmother going through that loss until
Mm.
she passed. So I understand in a way what you've gone through. And you're here today to talk about not only her passing, but also her music and her legacy and her life.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your daughter?
Okay. So my daughter's name is Lael. And actually this Saturday would have been her 33rd birthday. So she was August 30th, and she's a Virgo. Uh, and that says a lot, actually. She was really pretty classic Virgo, like in a lot of, in a lot of ways, in that sense of like just knowing what she wanted, very focused, really like, you know, did what she would say she would do and kind of, organized. And so as a mother of a daughter like that, it was, I mean, she was wonderful because it was, because I'm not so much that way. And she was like, I mean, sometimes when she was little, I would like almost ask her opinion. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea about stuff, but she just always knew. Like she was just always like into fashion, 2 years old, like this is this. And when I moved to Brooklyn, she would I would call her like, what's the best, what should I get? This or this? I'd be in like a store. So I mean, there's so many and there's so many things I could say. I just kind of went into this Virgo thing because it is her birthday, and that is um the birthday's really tough. It's been 8 years since she passed. She died by suicide in 2017 in July 26th. So this whole summer in general is the time of year where, it just kind of starts on the day that she passed, the 26th, and then it goes kind of through her birthday because there was a few days where they didn't find her body. She jumped off a bridge. I know sometimes people don't want to know the method, in New York City. And so there was like all that. And so I bring up the birthday often because two reasons, or a couple of reasons. One is obviously it was like, one of the biggest days of my life. I became a mother, my daughter's born. It was always such a happy day. And Lael loved her birthday. Always. I mean, to the end, it was never like oh, I don't want to celebrate my birthday anymore. Like birthdays were a big deal. Gifting, she said, Mom, gifting is my love language, meaning she liked to give gifts more,
Right.
I mean, receive them. And so when the birthday comes around, it is kind of just like always, and you never know. Every year's a little different. It could be, whatever it is, but it is something that in some ways is harder than the death day because it's like this supposed to be a completely happy day, and I'm still. I mean, I'll always be grateful that she was in my life, is in my life. I feel that she would have been turning 33. I feel like she is turning 33, even though she died when she was, a month before she turned 25. She was 24. So, in that way, she was just a very creative, um, from the time she was young, super creative, talented. Um, Again, like very focused and knew what she wanted, and like perfectionist for sure, very perfectionist. She would just like, like when she was 2, 3, she'd walk by like the easel and just draw something and keep walking. And then she really got into like fashion at one point. So I mean, I'm not going to go into her whole.
Right.
I could, and I love talking about Lael because I love her and I miss her, and she was an amazing human being. I know she's my daughter, and even like people who knew her, friends, even when she was like born, like I remember like when she was one, like one of our friends was like, "Wow, she's like a real diva, isn't she?" She had just like this quiet, like walk in a room, and it was like she's a legend, very beautiful. Um, that was always like one of the first things people would say when they met her, which I always thought was very like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And I'm not bringing this up that like looks, but just it just was it was just like that would just be the first thing. But of course, she probably didn't feel it. She struggled with an eating disorder. I mean, it started early on. I think she was actually, if you can say that, like born with depression almost. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but there was always like this mood, like, oh, she's in a good mood now. She's not teething. She's not colicky. And there was like a smooth period of time. And then suddenly there'd be like something that would be um, bothering her or like demanding, but like amazing. So I don't know if that was, but I feel like at 3, I wouldn't say, oh, my kid has depression. I would just be like, okay, she's a 3-year old. It's my first kid. It's not like I've been through like, generations and generations of this and I know what it is. And I see this, not at all. So, she had some things that were indicative early on, even with food, more like eating really quickly and anxiously. Anyway, so it manifested first as, really outward. What we saw was an eating disorder, anorexia, but at around 11. She started manifesting with, and like, hey, I lost whatever, 6 pounds. At the time it was just like, okay, like I wasn't thinking because it wasn't, she felt like she was a little bit, she had more of the classic. Now, listen, having been around this world for a long time now, like eating disorder, suicide, I know there's many versions that this thing takes of how an eating disorder manifests, whether it's the classic where she did have like, I look, I'm too fat. I look fat, even if she's, 90 pounds or whatever. But there's many other manifestations. My son actually has a bit of one and struggles a bit. So, and many people, like when she was struggling, anyone I spoke to, it was like, I realized, wow, more than 1 out of 2 people would respond, especially women, mostly women, would be like, oh, I had one when I was young, or I still struggle, or I had, like, it was just incredible to me at that time when she was young, how many people really have this. Like, it's just really like women are walking around, and now men as well, with this like body image situation. Um, so, so manifested at 11 with that. And then, but I didn't know, at 11, I was like, okay, I didn't know really anything about eating disorders in any deep way, just like what you see on like, you kind of almost like, I have a song called Anorexia. I'm a performer as well as she. Um, and, and so I thought, okay, you do these things like, you look up, you go to, there's certain things like you get the adolescent doctor, you get the nutritionist, you get the, you know, um, maybe a psychiatrist, maybe, and, you take care of it. And boy, that is just not what it is. It's not that simple, but I really thought, you just, yeah. And so we did all those things in the beginning and, it was very terrifying. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'll just do this. I mean, it was terrifying from the minute it started because within, within a month and a half, she lost 26 pounds,
Wow.
and lying on the couch. I could barely move, eating a tomato. Um, and I just had no clue, and then, then bringing her, she was hospitalized. She even, by the time she was 15, she was like going into her 5th hospitalization or residential treatment center. And so in all those years, there was a lot of, we really, sent her places and really hoped. And there was a lot of hope. I mean, there was a lot of recovery within that. But like 15, the first few years they were really rough because it wasn't changing. And it was just the depression, eating disorder, cutting. And she was a teenager. And, like when you go through these things, it wasn't, as life is, that's just not what I imagined at all. And, and then when she was 15, I kind of fell apart. It was like a combination of her just being sick for so many years and not like seeing, like people like, how's Lael? And I'd be like, like, and their kids are getting older and just doing regular. And she was doing stuff. She wasn't actually, I mean, she could have been, but she wasn't that person. She was kind of like on paper, right? On the outside, beautiful, popular, look great, like no high executive function, so people might like be like, so what's the problem? And that's like in the beginning, like her dad with well-meaning would be like, what are you depressed about? You know what I mean? It's like we don't understand that it's so deep, it's so much deeper than that. And it's and it's clinical and it's chemical and who knows what. And she was treatment resistant. And but when she was 15, I sent her to another place in Utah because I was falling apart. And this is a funny story. I don't know if I want to go into I could go into the whole story because we wrote a play about it ultimately. But basically, I knew she had to go away for a while because I had another kid at home, and now I can't really function well. And so I sent her to this place in Utah, which actually saved her life. She was there for 17 months, and I would say, and she said it saved her life. Really, like when she came back, I had gone through so much healing. She had gone through so much healing. Like we were all kind of all healing, and she, did well for a bunch of years. She went, she finished high school in New York, like went to this, just in 12th grade. And then went to USC, was a singer, right? So she was always a singer. From the time she was 2 years old, she was an amazing singer. Lael was like, I don't know if you know, like these kids, there's all these videos the kids watch, they did when there was videos and VHS,
Hmm.
uh, kids sing along songs. And she just watched them obsessively. And we didn't know like she was actually, and then one day we were just like, like just sing. And she knew every word to every song. Like we didn't even know she was just turning two. And we're like, whoa, she's been watching these things for like, half a year. Meanwhile, she knows every song perfectly. And it was just like, just remember that day. So it was like, wow, she can really sing. So by the time I remember once when she was 4, she was singing Over the Rainbow, but like in this way, and she was like pulling in her stomach, and it was unbelievable. I was just like completely blown away. And I was just like, and I used to say, like, do you want voice lessons? She was a little young, for that.
Hmm.
But ultimately at 10, she started voice lessons because she was just an incredible singer. And the first showcase she did at 10, um, she sang all that jazz from Chicago and beautiful, the one that Christina Aguilera sang, but it was written by like one of her favorite songwriters. I think Linda Perry, I think her name is.
Okay.
Might be getting it wrong. Is the one who wrote it. And I invited friends, and people were like in tears. They were just like, "Oh my God!" Like they had no idea. And I was like, "I know." And so that just became like a thing. Then she's a singer, right? She can sing. I mean, just naturally gifted with that. But meanwhile, all while during the eating disorder and all that stuff, like she was still singing in School of Rock. She was in the All Stars, but they thought she was too fragile because she was, skinny and depressed. But she always went to singing. So anyway, so eventually she went to when she after she went to like she was got into the like high school of performing arts in New York City called LaGuardia, which was like the Fame High School. But she really stayed a year, and then she just couldn't. She was just too down. Like so, then that's before she went to Utah. When she came back, ultimately she applied to USC. She really wanted to go to USC. They had this great program. It was called Pop Music at the Thornton School of Music. It was the second year of its existence. And she got in. It was like they accept 20 kids, and she was one of the vocalists. And and that was like and she was so excited about going. Ultimately, she didn't really love the program, but that might have been her just because of the depression and all that stuff. I mean, she loved the school, loved USC, loved LA, actually lived there after she graduated. She did graduate from there. But she had a suicide attempt. There was like 4 years in between Utah. I never was like, oh, we're out of like, I never felt as a mother like, oh, we're completely, it was cautiously like optimistic, like, okay, you know, um, not like we're like out of the woods. And she, she still was managing eating disorder. She never really, till she died, she never really had a piece of cake again or pizza. I mean, maybe when she was in treatment because they made you, they didn't let you not. But I mean, I even found something when she died in her journal. Not in her journal, one of the writing things. And then I didn't look at it anymore. Actually, I only looked at it briefly. And I was like, I can't look at this because, first of all, I don't want to see anything horrible about me. And it's just not my business. But I did see something about like the year before, that she died, like reasons to not have the eating disorder. And one of them was like, so I can have birthday cake for the first time in 14 years.
Wow.
Because when she was young, she loved food and she loved cake and she loved that was one of her loves, like food and I mean other things too that she continued to love, like costumes and dressing up and singing. But seeing that and also seeing in her journal, and that was when I was like, "Ah, I can't like a whole page of please don't let me have a tragic ending. Please don't let me have a tragic like just written over and over and over again. I know I'm all over the place,
You're
so
fine.
apologize about that. But when she went to USC, so there was like she was 4 years and then she had a suicide attempt while she was at USC in 2013, which I didn't see it coming, and but it was like I saw the eating disorder was like back in full force. I remember like talking to her on the phone and getting off and going, oh my God, that wasn't Elle I was talking to, that was the eating disorder. And I hadn't heard that in such a clear way. like the panic in her voice, and I gotta go to exercise. Da, 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 da. Um, and so that was, and that one, yeah, I mean, she survived and then called and told us, and then we flew out to LA, and, and then we realized, okay, she really needs a lot more treatment than we thought. But everyone thought she should stay in the school. She stayed in the school, did well for a few years. She had this therapist that she really loved, stayed in LA, and then had a horrible, like as if they're all good. And there were other suicide things. It wasn't like that was the first one. There were things even as a teenager, which is why she was in so many places, because she would threaten or took a handful of Advil or Prozac or whatever. And then, yeah, and then there was a really horrible suicide attempt. This is kind of towards the end. On election day, 2016.
Mm,
I was like, no connection, but I feel like energetically there was very much a connection. I did not see it coming. Her therapist, who she was so close, no one saw it coming, and it was really awful. Actually, she called me the 2 days before that, saying she had a slip. Mom, I had a slip. I haven't done this in so long, and I cut myself. I hadn't done that in a really long time, and but I guess I overdid it, and I got 21 stitches, and
wow.
I was like, 21. She never had any stitches from Eddie and Connie, like when she was a teenager. This was like, so I was just kind of like, it was, and she's like, I had to go to the hospital and it was really painful. And then she told me they let her out. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They let you out with your history? Because she told them her history. It wasn't like she went in there
Hmm.
and friend, and because she was so good at like, she convinced the guy, whoever it was, the doctor, which is crazy, which
Hmm.
isn't with suicide attempts, to say like, no, my friend, I'll go stay with my friend. She was with her friend. It wasn't a suicide attempt. So with me, when she said it to me, I said, Lael, I said, that's like, it was on your, and it was her wrist. You know what I mean? It was like literally like this
Hmm.
is completely, the sign. And I said, Lael, do you think that was a suicide attempt? Because like, you never, and she was like, well, maybe, I'll talk to, her therapist about it. And I was like, well, call her now. And she's like, no, I think she's away. I'm like, just call her. I regret that I didn't call that therapist at that moment. I should have. I didn't. I don't know why. Because I guess it was so many years of me back and forth running. It wasn't just like this one. It was like so many times. And I kind of, having had many years of Al-Anon, which I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah, I
Al-Anon.
am.
Yeah. So it was not that I was like, oh, I'm not going to help my daughter, but it was more like, what can I do? Like I'm constantly running, back, and I just was no, but I know I can't. Like you know, anyway. Point is, 2 days later, but she was like, I'm fine, and she was calling me. We were very much in touch. It was the election night. My son was in Budapest. He texts us, "What the fuck?" Oh no, WTF. And she didn't respond, and I thought that was weird because she would have. And then the next one I woke up, and I woke up to like, the news, which I was not happy about.
Yeah.
And look where we are, and knowing some of, anyway, I'm not going to go there. Um, and just really nervous about her. And I never do that. I called her at like 7 in the morning, New York time. It was 4 in the morning, LA time, because I was just like, because obviously because I knew she'd try to slip, she did
Right.
something. And she was like, didn't answer. And I was like, okay, it's 4 in the morning. And then I remember I had an appointment in the city. Um, and I tried her again at like 7 her time, and she didn't answer. And she would be going to work then. So then I was like really a little nervous. And I was actually seeing my therapist, psychiatrist. It was like a once every 6 month thing. And I was like, I'm a little nervous. And and then the mood of the city, everything was dead. Everyone was so upset. And then eventually I called her friend, and her friend was like, oh yeah, I'm a little worried too, because she was supposed to come last night to the election party and she didn't. As soon as I heard that, I was like, go to her house, break down the door, go, run. I didn't know I had a call. They called, whatever, 90 minutes. I didn't know if she was alive or dead. They found her. They busted open somehow. And yeah, she was in her bathroom and she tried to kill herself. It was really bad. And then I flew out there, and that was a whole thing. She really tried to kill herself. Like, it wasn't like, I mean, before she did, but this was like, I said, something saved you. Really, it was like, and then they said her therapist was so shocked. She's like, whoa. She's like, you need to go home. Anyway, she came back to Brooklyn and lived with me for the last 8 months of her life. I always feel like it was like reverse gestation because she slept next to me. And she was always such a mom. She was always total mama's girl. Everything was mommy. She would say, Mom, if you die, I'm not living. If you die, I'm not living. She was just a mama's girl, and from the time she was born, it was like everything was like she wouldn't. Um, but and during that last 8 months, she was doing stuff. She was, but during between, she had recorded albums. It wasn't like this. It wasn't only this.
Right.
She recorded albums during this period of time. She was singing. She was performing. She became a yoga teacher. She was working at a residential treatment center, helping others when she graduated because she realized because and they loved her there, or the clients loved her there, and she was just like a RA, but they loved her, and then they promoted her. When she died, I had people from there saying that she's the reason that they're alive today. They were like, Lael is the reason because she understood their pain so deeply. And a lot of them flew out from California, came here, went to her grave, came to this play that I was kind of mentioning before that we did 6 months after she died, but she wrote part of it. The whole family wrote. So I mean, she was an amazing human being. And then people like, she's a legend. And then when she came home for 8 months, she was struggling that year. It was tough. And I had wanted to maybe, say maybe you should go back to a place. I regret now that I didn't really push it. There was a place in LA. She was like, I know the people there. I'm like, so what? Not the place she worked in. But in the end, it was something very specific that upset her that day, which is, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it was something that happened, like a guy kind of thing. And it triggered, who knows? I mean, she was always suicidal. I won't say that was it. She was a suicidal person. But that one specific thing, she was angry, and I knew it. And when I finally got her phone back, I saw the text between her and the guy, and it was like, pissed she had gotten an STD and whatever, and just didn't say a nice comment. And this person was 55 and she was 25. So, and he's like, oh, I'm always safe. And I don't want to go into it because,
Right, right.
it's
But
not cool. Point is, I went into a lot of stuff, but she was amazing. You know, um, really, and even as much as like I knew she might kill herself one day, like I really did. Other people like, I'm so shocked. I'm like, why would you be, she just didn't want to be here, initially when she first died, I just went into like, she wanted to die. Like she just really didn't want to be here. In fact, she had once said to me, Mom, sometimes I really resent all of you. I know I have a great life. I know I have great family. I have great friends. And but sometimes I resent all of you for your love is making me stay. Like I keep being pushed down into the darkness and I can't take it anymore. And there was a moment of like, not like I want you to die, but like this is suffering. This is suffering beyond something that, yes, I have anxiety, I have stuff, and sometimes people would, say like, people who kill themselves are selfish. I mean, you know, it's selfish to say live for me in a way. Like, I mean, now I would never tell someone not to kill. I would never say this, but I'm saying it's now 8 years. It took me 7 years to finally realize, like, I could advocate for suicide prevention. It really took me a long time to be like, not that I was like for suicide, I never was for suicide, but understanding that someone does it. Maybe you understand what I'm trying to say. Maybe you don't.
no, I do.
Um, you do because you've been right. And I had people when, you know, it's just kind of like, but now I'm like, no, Lael even had a thing written. You can just help if I can just help one person. And I realized she was only 24. I could look at it as a slip. I've seen people that I know from meetings and things that try to kill themselves 3 times and now they're 40 and they're so happy they're alive because life can change. Now, I don't know what her story would have been. Maybe it would have just continued who knows? But now I can really feel like, you know, I can, advocate for at least, being a listener, being here to listen to someone if they're depressed, saying, are you suicidal? I didn't know that you should ask someone, are you suicidal? I didn't know that with Lael. I know it now. You know, my son has struggled with mental health issues, and I've learned a lot with him. Different manifestations, but he's kind of right now is a slight miracle happening because after she died, he kind of, the younger brother, he kind of went into. So it was a lot. So I've been like really hit with like, I've been hit. The family has been, mental illness has really been a thing. But Lael was incredible. She had a bunch of albums out, and her songs are, her voice, her songs, and we're re-releasing them now. I always knew when she died, like I want to re-release them. I want to make, I want people to hear her voice. And she had just started doing a new album before she died, like 6 weeks before she died, recorded, not even, she started recording like 2 more songs. Because at one point she was like, Mom, I don't think I can do music like after school. And I'm like, that's okay. Like it was no, she's like, because look at me. She's like, how could I always thought my whole life I was going to be a star, like a pop star, like absolutely. Like she said, but how could I handle it? I'll never be able to handle it. look at me like, just everyone like paying attention to your looks and your body and what it takes. And I was like, oh, got it, no problem. She's like, she's apologizing to me as if it was my ex. I wasn't. I just want her to, just want her to be alive, and happy happy, you know. And but then she decided like a few weeks before, and she'd written like we had little demos on her iPhone. She worked with the person she worked with before. It's my partner also, as well as my music creative partner. And they started their first two songs. One was called Insidious, which is out. Um, and another one that we have not released yet. But that one, because of technology now, we're able to extract it from an iPhone, her
Right.
voice, because it's so great, even though it was a demo, and they created a track around it. So, I mean, she loved cats. She loved animals. She had a beautiful heart. She really did. And I feel like she felt other people's pain and the world's pain too much. It was just too harsh for her. Um, and that's just a little bit of Lael. I mean, there's so much. She loved clothes, glamour. I never had a pedicure till Lael was my daughter. I miss the mom daughter stuff and just her. But I speak to her all the time. Actually, in the last few days, my phone has been pocket dialing her. Still on my favorites, even though someone else has the number now. But that hasn't happened in a long time. I'm like, well, what's up?
Could be. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
my journey has been a lot longer, and I do apologize. I'm sorry for your loss. It's one of those things where you can be prepared for it. But because my mom, she tried to commit suicide when I was a kid, and she
Mm,
tried to commit suicide when I was in high school, and I saved her. And ultimately, as somebody put it very well, these a group of parents, there was a mom and dad, and I was in this group, and they were talking about the fact that their daughter had continually tried to commit suicide. And they framed it in a way that actually made a lot of sense to me because they're like, she completed her mission. Her mission was suicide. And we don't look at it that way. And yeah, I went through when my mom first died, I went through the whole fact of how could she be so selfish? And,
mm,
and, and I went back there when my grandmother passed, when my grandmother got sick and she was gonna pass. I went back to the anger because it's like you should be here taking care of her. This is not my responsibility. But ultimately, I know that she had her own demons and she was never going to get past them because she wasn't willing to face them. And she had a lot of physical pain and she was married to somebody who, knowing, I often say this because while he did not pull the trigger, he knew I told him that she was in a very dark place and he needed to get her some help. And instead of getting rid of a gun, he left the gun in the house. So, if you know somebody's suicidal and you say, "Hey, I'm just going to keep the gun available," and then the comment of, "Well, for my first marriage, I got a microwave oven, and this one I got X number of dollars." So whether when you don't have that, when you have a partner that is not your protector or looking out for your best interest, it's a natural occurrence. This man was there you know, when I was in high school, she took a bunch of pills
mm,
and she had a major fight with him. It was Valentine's Day. He had sent his ex-wife roses, didn't send my mother anything. And by the next morning, she had taken some more pills and she went out to the garage and she got in the car and she didn't open the door. She was going to start it. And I just looked at her and I said, I'm calling the paramedics. You need to stop this. I was in tears and I called the paramedics and they came. And by the time, and he was in the bedroom the whole time. And my stepbrother was there and he didn't know what was going on. By the time the paramedics came, my stepfather came waltzing out of the room, acting like. And so she was in a coma for 3 days. And very much like your story, very much like your story. So she's in a coma for 3 days. They keep her for a psych eval, and she convinces them that she was just burned out. And this was 1983, 1984. So back then, we didn't really, especially women's mental health, we didn't really look at. And
right.
so she came home and everything was fine.
Wow.
Hmm. And I mean, in when she tried it when I was little, I don't know much about. I was in fourth grade, fourth, fifth grade. I don't know much about the details of it, but I know she got out pretty quick.
Right.
So I think that ultimately we don't really, and there got to be a point where my mother would threaten it all the time. She would threaten it when I lived with her. When I lived in Dallas, the most horrific one, she called me for a month straight telling me she was going to do it. My stepfather had already moved. So the worst was when she called me and told me she wanted me to come find her. She wanted
Right.
me to come find her. She was going to shoot herself in the bathroom stall, and she wanted me to drive back from Dallas to Shreveport, which is about a 3.5 hour drive, and find her. And I said to her, I said, if you loved me, you wouldn't be asking me to do that. Why don't you, let's get some help. And looking back, you have those moments where you look back and I'm like, well, should I have called the police to come take care of her? But let's be honest here. If they didn't do it when she had been in a coma for 3 days, what do you think? Don't you think? And I've had a friend who seemed like she needed help. She convinced the police she was just fine. And you
Yeah.
know that somebody that is suicidal and they don't want the help, they can be very convincing that everything is okay. Because the people that knew my mother that lived around her after she moved up to Indiana, they all said she was excited about your wedding. She was so excited about that. But yet the day she called me to tell me she was going to do it, I knew in my heart of hearts this was it. And she told me to have a nice wedding.
Wow.
And then hung up and would not answer the phone after that. And she called my grandmother and told her that she was going to do it. And the worst part of it is she did it. And because my grandmother had a heart condition, my grandmother, I flew up to Indiana. I did not tell my grandmother for 4 days, and she kept calling my house, and I had to get on the phone with her and lie on the phone to her until we had my mother's ashes and tell her my mother most likely was fine, that everything was okay. And I had to freaking lie to her because this news had to be with us there, not on the phone.
Of course.
So I understand where you're at. And yeah, I mean,
And
there's,
also,
go ahead.
it's so interesting to me, not interesting, but like people will like, sometimes like I've been asked, like I was working with like a PR person on my one of my things with the Lael Project, and to like write like something about, what can you tell suicide people? And I'm like, I cannot write. And no offense to anyone who can write these kind of things, especially about suicide. I cannot write like 5 things I've learned, like to help you, because it just doesn't, I can't, there's so many things now, right? The 10 reasons, I'm like, I can't, that's not how it works with this. And it's like being in the, now in the world of, being a suicide survivor. I've heard there's so many different stories. Like there's no one thing. Like I would say like, oh, if you, like people sometimes will say like, well, the person, you know, they were happy, they were in a good mood, or like they just booked a trip. So how come they killed, they kill themselves. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. The person could take a trip. Or I would think, like Lael never talked about. I mean, Lael, we knew she was suicidal, but she would never say, I'm going to kill myself like today, like your mother, like telling you and then actually doing it. Someone might say, well, if they're talking about it, then that's good because that means that they won't do it. Like all these things but suicide's mysterious and we don't really know. And we got to take it all seriously, but it's just interesting. Not, like with you, that your mother was actually saying it and did it.
Well,
And
go
you
ahead.
know, you know what I mean? And whereas it where like my experience wasn't that, but Lael did say things like, and she would make comments like, "Oh, I tried." One time I visited her in LA, and she was like, after her boyfriend broke up, this one guy she went out with, she's like, "Well, I tried to hang myself, but then I decided not to." Like, and this was like she's been fine for a while, and I'm like sitting there, like, as you know, there's no way to respond to these things. It's like I'm sitting there with my daughter in her apartment in LA. And she's telling me she tried to hang herself a few weeks ago, and then decided, no, I didn't. And I'm like, well, I'm glad. Like, there's no book. There's nothing to tell. No one knows how to
No.
handle this. No one knows how to handle any of this. I mean, we do our best. We love it. There's no way you know how to handle. It's not something that's intuitive. Like, how to respond. There is no right. And that's when I start saying, well, it's something bigger than me. I'm not in charge of life and death. I mean, yes, of course, if you're going to call the police like you did or whatever. But one of the things that I didn't say before, which is when we wrote that play, because the play was basically, um, basically while she was sick, when she was like 15, like I was kind of getting more and more panic attacks. I had always had them before, nothing to do. I've earned them. Those are my own, nothing to do with anyone else, but they were getting worse. And I had been I had an alcoholic boyfriend, and there's a breakup of my marriage. And so my panic attacks were getting worse and worse. And that day particularly, and now I realize it might've been partly perimenopause, but who knows about that, because no one ever talked about
Right.
shit. How come no one knows anything? you know, it might have been worse for that, but my world was getting smaller and smaller. Like I was afraid to do things because I was afraid my heart would race and go upstairs. So that day was a hard day. I came home. I said, "Oh, I just need to relax. I'm really having a hard day." And I was like, "Mom, I need my meds." She was 15, right? And I was very terrified of meds. Like that was one of the things I was scared. Anything, no, like for myself, not for someone else, but for me. And so I was like, "Okay, I'll get you meds. You don't have to hide them." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I took it out. She was taking some Balta, and I just like got the water, and I just wanted a sip of water. And without thinking, I just popped the pill in my mouth and like drank the water, because it was just like, like the pill.
Yeah.
And then I freaked out. I was like, "Oh my God." Because I was so freaked out about any kind of medication. I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like in the bathroom, "Lael, I took your pill. Oh my God. How do I throw it up? How do I throw it up?" And she's like in there like, "Mom, what is wrong?" Like, I'm like, and I was literally freaking out. And she's sitting there. It was like a very funny scene in the back of my head, because I'm a playwright. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm going to play with this. This is so black comedy. I'm like, I'm begging my anorexic daughter, bulimic daughter, how to throw up a pill, because I took one pill, and I'm like, well, she's like, what? She's like, "Mom, this is making me very uncomfortable." I'm like, "I don't care. Show me how to throw it up." And she's like, "Mom, okay, you take a toothbrush." And she says, she's like, "I don't need a toothbrush." And I'm like, "Show me." And then I'm like, she's like, "Well, sometimes I use my stomach." I'm like, "Show me." She's like, she's like, "Mom, what do you think's going to happen?" "Nothing's going to happen. I've taken handfuls. Nothing happened." Like, this whole kind of black comedy scene, also horrible. But like in the moment, I was just like, I was really freaking out. But in my head, I'm like, this is going to play one day. And like, but literally from that moment on is when I fell apart. Like it was like my like crack. When I said I had that hard year,
Mhm.
that's when I couldn't come off. Once that happened, and my freak out about taking the pill, and then I couldn't come down. I was like on anxiety, like 24/7 panic attack, like no relief. And that's when, like, after a few months, I realized she has to leave, like, because I can't have her here, because I can't even I have to take care of my son. It just triggered a whole thing. I mean, obviously it was meant to happen. So years later, my son comes up. He's like, "Oh, I wrote a pilot for a TV show, like a comedy." And like, it's the opening, and it's this pill. It's this story of the pill. And I'm like, "Oh," and it was very black comedy. It was over the top. He threw in people there. It was like his so sarcastic, like, "This is my sister. Look at her." Like, you know, like when she says things like, "I just ate." And he's like, "I ate 6 months ago, so I'm fine." Like, it was very funny, like black,
Yeah.
whatever. So I was like, "Oh, I want to write my version. Now that you wrote this, I'm going to write." And I wrote like a play about like what happened. And then I asked Lael, I said, "I'm going to ask everyone." I asked Lael, "Can you write about what happened with the pill?" And she wrote like a narrative when Mom took my crazy pills. And then I asked my father, who barely remembered, but he wrote like this whole narrative essay. And then my mother, an interview. And it was all really brilliant. We're all good writers. And we mashed it together. And it became this play, almost like a Rashomon, like what really happened. Then I started like calling it and like, crafting it for other things. And we all loved the play because it was really funny, and it was actually really brilliant. I mean, I would say Yanai and I wrote the majority, but it was all of it. And we did readings. People loved it, and they were laughing and also crying, because it always ended with, because it was about a daughter, growing, having a teenage sister or daughter with this eating disorder and suicidal. And it was like, it kind of had moments like, does she kill herself because she takes these pills? And in it, I wrote a scene, and I told Lael, and when I wrote it, I said, "This does not mean I mean this, but I just thought, because of going through this, like what we're talking, you will understand this." It was like I had a scene with the mother's like, the daughter's just so upset, depressed all the time. And she was just finally like, and then she says, like, "What I told you, like, I resent all of you keeping me here. I just want to go. I know
Mhm.
I'm loved." And mother's like, "You know what? Who am I to say, keep you here? I give you permit." And like, she doesn't say it. And then I wrote in that the father's like, "No, I'm against." This didn't really happen. None of this actually really happened. I wrote, "No," the father says, "No, I'm against this ending. This is not." And then she doesn't do it. But the point is, when we put up that show, people who had family members with mental illness and suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempts came up to me and thanked me for that scene. They're like, I totally understand that. Not to be like we want it to happen, but like, what can we can't, this person is constantly trying to do this thing. And they thanked me. Of course, then when we actually, the day Lael died is the day La Mama, which is a big, pretty, renowned theater in New York, agreed to produce this play. No connection to her dying. And I was like, and then she dies that night. And I was like, I'm still putting on the play. We're not changing anything. It's still, we don't know if she died. And we did. We actually did, but it just, the black comedy was still there, but very hard, especially if the audience knows that she died 6 months earlier because suddenly it's a tragedy, because
Yeah.
there were funny things. But there was a lot of voodoo in the play, but it actually kept me, it was really good for me as far as like when she died, it kept me like focused on this thing. I don't know if you ever read Blue Nights,
Mm-mm.
uh, Joan Didion, stuff after her daughter died. It wasn't suicide. She was doing a play. I mean, she's super famous and it was a play on Broadway, but she was like, she was just doing the play, maintain momentum. But that thing, like what you were saying, like with your mother, like after a while, if someone's telling you all the time they're gonna kill you, they're gonna kill themselves, and you're the child.
I was
It's
22 when
odd.
I was 22 when the whole month call was happening, but when I go back to the car, the one thing about the car is she sat there and she looked at me and she said to me, "If you call the paramedics, I'll never forgive you."
Right,
And I said, "I don't care, I love you."
right,
But at a certain point during this whole journey, it got, especially after she completed
right,
the suicide, I was like, was it worth it? Should I have just let her die when she wanted to? And the real kicker, which also was another slap in the face to me, is when she got out of the hospital in high school there, she tells everybody how my stepfather saved her life. And looking back, though, she needed to believe that this
right,
man loved her.
right,
It because she knew she had my love. But she would
right.
always choose him no matter what, because there was a time when he got physically abusive with me and I was 21, and she's like, if he chooses to kick you out, I can't do anything.
Wow.
And
So
so
yeah.
she would always choose him. And I found some love letters a couple of years ago that she had written to him. And it was just like she was so desperate for his love. And she
Mm.
was so insecure about who she was that she needed somebody outside of her, a man outside of her, to validate her.
I mean, I'm so sorry that you had to go through all that because that's very hard, as a child. I mean, obviously to lose your mother, to your mother trying to kill. I mean, when I've been in groups and I've seen people who lost their mothers young or at any age, but particularly like you're a fourth grade or you're high school, even later on. But like, I mean, there's no way you're not going to think that your parent is not choosing you. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, it's just a horrible. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and see that because it's like also being parentified and now you have to be in charge um and I can feel compassion because it's not my story for your mother who's like obviously suffering so much from all this stuff and her needs, you know, to even not, to just, it just,
Well,
yeah, this mental. I mean, your mother, it's because obviously your mother had mental health issues. I don't know if she was an addict as
no,
well.
she wasn't.
She
She
wasn't.
her food was her addiction, but the one thing I would say is, and I've thought about this in recent years, is I look at a picture of her at her baby shower, and her eyes are already vacant looking. When
Right.
she's pregnant with me, and I have to wonder, did she have, postmenopause, or not menopause, but
Postpartum.
postpartum depression, and that was never treated. Did she, and she had this wasn't just rejection that way. It's like fifth grade, her and my teacher became friends. So in sixth and seventh and eighth grade, I'm living with this other woman that I can't stand.
Oh, wow.
But my mom would go over there and tutor people. So she said, in her mind, she saw me every night. Just because you're there doesn't mean you're seeing me. So it's
Right.
like,
Right.
I understand she was the greatest mother in the world until she wasn't.
Right. And that's very,
Once they split, that was it.
and that's very confusing too,
Hmm.
because like one day, so I just feel for you. And again, like we all have different, very different stories. So when people like want to like make sense of it, but like this, it's like there's no through line. Even with the eating disorder, we went in so many treatment centers, and you look at all the girls, or I mean, these were all just girl places at that point, and there was no through line. It wasn't like, oh, the parents were divorced, or they all had loose, lenient mothers like me, or they had strict mothers, or no, there was no one thing that was like the same, other than that these girls had a thing. And then with suicide, it's, I mean, I've been maybe if you've been in any groups, like there are many people, I haven't recently, but when she first died, people who had no clue. Actually, the same night that Lael, she jumped off the George Washington Bridge, someone else jumped off the bridge. And I knew about it because the police came and they were telling us that, like, because they didn't find her body, but they found her stuff, which is why I was like, well, she died. As soon as I got the call from her friend, like, a jogger found her, you know, her bag and her cell phone and her flip flops on the George Washington Bridge. And I was sleeping and I woke up to this. And all I did, as soon as I heard those words,
You
George
knew.
Washington, and those things, I was like, she fucking did it. It was like, she fucking did it. But then I had to convince, them, like, my daughter killed herself. Like, I know. And they're like, and they weren't looking. But the point is, they came in, they were like, well, someone else jumped that night. 6 months later, I go to a meeting and a woman's in the group. And when I say something at the George Washington Bridge, she looks, and we were in the same group. It was her husband who jumped like a few hours later. Nothing, no, obviously not connected. Now we're kind of friends. No clue as to why he did it. We'll never know. No, 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 nothing. He was a glass half full guy, not depressed. Like, she knew he was having something with work. Like, completely. This is the thing. But some people, out of the blue, like,
Hmm.
they just don't even. I mean, I don't even. What are you leaving behind, a 5 and a 7-year-old? Like, it's like crazy. It's like the mystery. With us, we know why. And
But
they.
I think a lot of times, it goes back to something we are talking about a little bit is even though my mom was very honest about what she was thinking at times, there were other times when everything was fine. So she was
Right.
very good at masking, and depending on who the audience was, she
Yes.
wouldn't mask for me, but she
Right.
would mask. I think in a way there was a power dynamic by her telling me she was going to do this. I mean, I look back and go, well, this was actually rather emotionally abusive.
Yeah,
And I hate to say that because
it
people
is.
are like, well, but it is. And
Yeah.
so it's like when I look at this, it's also a power dynamic for her because here I am telling her, Mom, just leave him. You can go on. You can do this. We can do this, trying to help save her. And I think that's the biggest lesson in all of this. And I believe in suicide prevention, but I have to say this, and this is coming from surviving and outliving her by 16 years. And that is you can't save everybody and you
No.
can't be guilty. I'm not, now, if you sat there and said, oh, go fucking kill yourself, then okay, then yeah, maybe you should be guilty. And if you didn't take a gun out of the house, then maybe you should be guilty. But you can't save everybody, no
And
matter
then I
how much you want to help.
I know someone, I mean, from my meetings, I said I go to Al-Anon, right? So I went there originally for the boyfriend, but then quickly realized, oh, this applies to Lael. Like, I can't control her eating disorder. Like, it took a long time to understand, like, I really cannot, I'm powerless over all of it. Like, I can do what I can do. And then we're like, I'm not in charge, there's relief in that because you're like trying to, like, do all this stuff. But I do know someone in a group who's like, she said, like, the day before her brother, like, she had a fight with him. She said, if I were you, I'd fucking kill myself. And then he did. Now he was suicide. Now, of course, it's still not her fault, right?
Right, right.
But yes, we cannot save anyone. And then, it's funny. I never went through the anger thing. My psychiatrist is always like, you should get a little angry. Um, but like, I could see, I mean, it is emotional abuse. I mean, and this is with all my heart towards the suffering that your mother had, that's how much she was in it, that she was like, having this hang over your head all the time and putting that on you. That's just, that's intense, and again, people, of course, the ones we're closest with, we don't mask as much,
Mm-mm.
right? You can show up and then all of a sudden, your kid or your spouse or you shouldn't do it with your kid. But, we do. I mean, as a mother, I won't maybe tell them all my stuff, but like, if you're angry about everything else that's going on in the world and you come home and you're just in a bad mood and you can just, snap at your child or whatever, you know, I mean, it's very, we just have to, anyway.
But
Yeah.
there's a gift in this. There's a gift in this because I was taking some medication. I had been on it for 3 days, and I started thinking to myself, "Oh, my husband would be better off without me. Oh, and I started thinking these things, and I was like, "Oh, this is that medication. I'm stopping this." And I did, and I went to the doctor, and he's like, "Yeah, that was good that you stopped that."
Yeah, that is very good. Oh, wow.
Because, but here's the thing, would I have had the presence to recognize that it wasn't me had I
No,
not had my mother?
no. Because like one of the things that we know that
Hmm.
we learn not while they're alive, well, definitely once they die, is that one of the red flags is feeling that you're a burden to others and they'll be better off alive. I mean, that's definitely
Hmm.
one red flags that we have to take very seriously, you
Yeah.
know, like, yeah, so that, no, listen, I hate using the word gifts for myself, but there have been, like, I am so much stronger than I've ever been. It helped me, I mean, then, then with the, like, of like the sucker punch, my son really struggling the last few years. Now I'm really strong. Lael stuff, that whole pill incident is the reason why I do music. I started doing music in my 40s. I never sang or did music. I'm not nothing like her in terms of like the talent of a singer, but I'm a good artist. I'm a writer and a performer. But it was because I was so anxious 24/7. I had to do something. And so I just started, being creative and writing. And then I started writing songs because singing made me feel better. I literally realized, oh, if I sing, I feel better. So I'd be like sitting in my house and I'd start singing like show tunes. Like I was singing, Sound of Music and whatever, Chicago or whatever. And then going to my acting class, which I was in already, and then bringing those songs, and then attaching them to like my own writing. And then eventually I started writing my own songs. But it was all because just literally because it was life or death. And then eventually I was like performing this stuff a cappella. I'm like, I was never a singer. I'm not really that person at all. And then I met, like, I got to find a musician. And then because of that, I found someone recommended this guy, Tomas. And then we've been working together 16 years. And my 10th album is coming out next week, next in October. This is like, that came out and she was alive then. While she was in Utah, you know, it was like that, my whole creative, and I've been performing, I just came back from England. Like I'm a performer and doing music. And of all things, like everything I've done in my life are things that I never in a million years would have imagined or even maybe necessarily even wanted. Like I didn't, because when I was even younger, like I didn't think I'd ever be doing solo shows. That was like the last thing. Like I took a first acting class at 26, like, oh, well, maybe, I'll see. Like I just I want to try. And then I fell in love with it. And then I had kids and I stopped. And then one day I wanted to take another class. And a friend of mine was like, well, why don't you take this? Creating one person show. I'm like, are you kidding? It was like the scariest idea. Like, I'm not Eric Bogosian, John Leguizamo, or Sandra Brown. I'm like, oh my God. She's like, well, you like writing, you like acting. And I'm like, and I did it terrified. And you had to write like a free write, you know, and they gave me the word shoes, or all of us the word shoes. And you went around and read what you wrote, just like journaling, stream of consciousness was
Hmm.
easy. And I read what I wrote, and everyone was like, oh my God, you're like Lou Reed and Patti Smith, like all this downtown New York, which I'm from, you know. And I was like, this shit, this is just what I write. This is like my journal. But this is like the lesson that I feel like, and this is before anything to do with Lael, but this is the lessons in life for people like where we don't know what we're capable of. And sometimes the things that seem easy to us are the things that we might discount. Like, this is just who I am. Like, why would I ever think this is valuable? I mean, why would I, and then realizing that we don't always know. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
and sometimes, and because I can be very hard on myself. Like, what if, like, what comes easy to you is your gift? Like, is the gift? Like for me, so if it comes easy, well, then it's not really special. I got to be able to do the thing that doesn't come easy. It's supposed to, like, yeah, and so then like that was when I started doing like the shows, the creating one person show stuff, and I stuck with it. And the first time I performed, like there were like 4 people who lasted in that class. People like, oh my God, they thought I would been doing this forever. It's like, no, not at all. And just like with music, so I always like, and this is a separate conversation, but I always like to tell people like, first of all, it's never too late. Starting music in my 40s seemed late. Now I do a show with my dad. He's gonna be 90 in October. He never acted before he was 87.
Wow.
And I thought I started late. And now we're like literally being booked for this show that, mostly him. It's our show, but it was based on stories he wrote when he was in his 50s about growing up in Brooklyn in the 1940s and 50s. And this show for the last 2.5 years is like touring. We're getting booked all the time. I'm like, Dad, I can't believe this. It was after my mother died. I mean, it was like Lael died, then my ex-husband died of ALS. My son went crazy. He's doing much better now, day at a time. Um, and my mother, and it was just like, all right, my nervous system, I'm done. Like, I'm not anymore doing party planning because I never really want to do it anyway. And I gotta like, I'm getting older here. But like the thing with my dad, so he always says, you're never too old to be young. Now he's healthy, he has a sound mind, he still works, but still he found something he loves to do at 87. And now he's almost 90 and he's been acting and he's great. So the whole point is like we don't know. Like these are like the things I feel like have inspired me. Like you just never know in life. Like we put like a lot of these things like, no, no, it's too this, can't do it, it's too late, it's not true. And I think, I did some of this stuff before Lael died, but Lael's death, I never wanted to die after she died. And a lot of parents do. Like
Oh,
where they really are like, I want, even if they have 10 other kids. And I was like, right away, there was like something in me, like people would go, how are you? And I'd be like, I'm walking, I'm talking. And when people, I'm like, I want to live. Like, it was like almost like as if like there was like a choice. I'm like, well, no, I want to live. But maybe I knew somehow, I don't know, but there was just always my comment. And I always felt like it's not my destiny. Like, I have this life and I'm here to, like, I'm here for the long haul. I'm like, no, I'm in it for the long haul. And also, I felt like this automatic feeling like I need to be a role model for other people. Like, even before I was like 2 days in, I was like, for other people to say that they can, like, I'm joining the line of all the mothers who've lost their children and like, we can survive this. It's not easy. It sucks. It's horrible every day. But there is still like I still can have some joy, and I do, you know, and I feel blessed. And again, it doesn't take away that it sucks and it is the worst thing, but that's just me. Other people are different. I mean, I'm in groups of people and I see they're just like, I want to die. They're just like praying to die every day, you know?
my grandmother was okay, except for like the birthday and the anniversary. That was when it really hit her. Every year it was like, here we are.
Yeah.
And she would talk about wanting to die and everything else. But I attribute her to
But
continuing to live.
she had you though. She had
E-
to live for you.
Exactly, because
I get a lot of people saying I'm living for my grandkids.
she died. I was in my 40s when I got married my second time. But
Uh-huh.
she died 3 months after we got married.
So she was
She,
like,
right,
she's sick, she's in love, she's
right, exactly. She knew I was safe. She knew everything about it. And it came down to a phone call that I'm not very pleased about. My husband had been in the hospital because he had a pseudoaneurysm after having a heart stent put in.
uh-huh.
And so he's in the hospital, and I have had bilateral ankle surgery. So I'm in boots on both my feet. So I'm not really supposed to be driving too much. And she calls me and she's like, because she had gone to a care facility and we were going to get ready to bring her back home in the next the next month after my husband got back home. And she's like, you don't love me. And I'm like, I love you very much, but my place right now is to be here with my husband.
Mm,
He gets out. The following Monday, I get a call that she fell. And I go to the hospital and she's got bleeding on her brain. And I held her hand until she passed.
right,
And then when I released her ashes, it had been raining in New Orleans. And as soon as I released her ashes, the sun came out. It stopped raining, sun came out for about
right.
5, 10 minutes, and then started raining again.
That's interesting too. Oh wow, what a story. I mean, yeah, because I have the same Lael's funeral, pouring,
Hmm.
pouring. Like there were five. I have a song that I haven't actually recorded it yet, but it's like there were like literally like 500 umbrellas. Like everyone was like sharing it, and it was like the summer, and it was pouring. And then it's similar, like after like the whole thing, all of a sudden, like there was like the clouds, like there was like a parting, like it seems like in a movie, like this can't even the little rays of sun, but not super sunny, and I just heard her voice going, I think it was her, Ma, it's all about love, Mom. That's it. It's just all about love. And I was just like, or that was just a feeling I had, like it's just about love. Like I know it's so simple, but it was just like that was it. And then, yeah, and whatever. But like the same, like similar,
Hmm.
interesting, like sun, and then the. So
Well,
you live? Are you in New Orleans now?
no. No, I live up in outside of Chicago, but even my husband at the time had said that he's like, she's happy with what you did because I kept saying, "What
Yeah.
do you want done?" And she's like, I want to donate my body to science. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be buried. Okay. But I want to be cremated. Okay. And I mean, she never had an answer. So I
Right.
ended up donating tissue for burn victims. I put a little bit of ashes in, I lifted out my grandfather's urn and put a little bit of ashes with my grandfather's area. And then I released her into the Mississippi where my mom was.
Nice.
So yeah, I did what I thought was going to be okay with her. And
Right.
that's the thing. What we don't look at as, when people think about suicide, they think it's an easy out. And it's not an easy out, even for the person that's going through it.
Yeah.
But anybody that's contemplating it, when you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, they'll be better off." The thing is it's not because we're going to miss you.
No,
It
and
affects all of us.
that's why when I say about advocating now, like I for the first time I did something with AFSP, and I like to write love in our arms. There's a bunch of organizations. Um, but like you just said something that not that like we if somebody really wants to kill themselves, they're going to. I mean, there's nothing, but you don't know. Like maybe someone like, exactly, maybe the person there are those who like not my daughter, but like, who might be contemplating or about to do it, and maybe they make that call or they tell someone or they choose to um reach out because Lael was on the phone with her friend, like texting. But she didn't say she was on the George Washington Bridge. She just was texting. Like she could have been like, "Hey, I'm in trouble."
Hmm.
I think some people do, and those are maybe the ones that maybe those who because you hear about that, like they do reach out and they're like, "Okay, I'm really in trouble here. I want to kill myself," and you're like, "Okay," and then instead of maybe and how do you respond to that and how do you react to it and take it very seriously because I do always say to people like anyone who says anything, you have to kind of take it seriously. It doesn't mean you can do something necessarily,
No.
but don't like, and I didn't know that, when Lael, the first time she ever said anything about it, she was like in third or fourth grade. And I took it seriously, but it was like to a teacher. She wanted attention. I mean, they took it seriously and they said for her to go to, you know, therapist and she went and they're like, no, you need family therapy. And we didn't do it, which is like, I can't even believe because like I'm open minded to all that. Like I do therapy and like but I can't blame myself. I mean, listen, I have my own moments of, you have moments of like, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry if I ever hurt you. And, that I didn't know any better. I didn't, I mean, and yet we did so much. I mean, we censored us, the places and things, hundreds of
Right.
thousands. Like, it's not about the money. It's just, you were a loved person. And then her saying, I know I'm loved. I know I have, like, when she was a teenage, I always felt like if she died when she was a teenager, I think it would have been it's always horrible and devastating, but a different kind of devastation because we hadn't gone through so much recovery and thing where she was already older, whereas like, no, I know. At 13, she might have been like my family or whatever. It would have been more like a just so young. I mean, and so many kids are killing themselves now at 12, 10. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, not that 24 is old because it's not. Um,
No.
yeah. I mean, that's why, I started this Lael Project thing. I mean, I call it Lael Project, which I realize everything is called a project. Um, but it was like it took me like like I said, 7 years where I was like, I knew I wanted to re-release the music. And so that was always there. But I just didn't have it. I was too sad in the beginning to even like do like a happy life celebration. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, um, but eventually they were working on the songs with the same guys who I work with who did the original albums, have all the stems and they did reimaginations of stuff. And so we didn't know we were planning on doing it. And then last year, this time in September, we realized it was in like, oh shit, this is suicide. Hello, like, I'm getting a call. So this is suicide awareness month, and maybe this is the time we should do something. We could be like release the first it was a couple of an Adele song. And the reason why it's not like it was so important that it was Adele, but it was like Lael had done a carpool karaoke in like LA. She used to do this app when she said she wasn't singing anymore and she would secretly like go and sing. And and they were amazing. And then like when she died, they sent me, the app found me and they were like, listen, we're so sorry. She was our favorite person using the app, and here are all the videos, you might want them. And one of them was just like her singing Hello in the car. And it was incredible that she just singing this song the way she sang, in my opinion,
Hmm.
and she, and then hearing it, calling, hello, it's me. It's been a while since we talked. I'm calling from the other side. I'm so, sorry for, all this stuff. You're like, whoa, it's like it has such a different meaning. So we released that first, and then we started releasing a lot of the originals. So that was last year. Um, and that was the first time I was like, okay, I can get behind. It's not like I'm going to go out there and be like, no suicide, but like I want to help. I want to be I want to just join the community of people who mental advocacy. Like, hey, we hear you. You're not alone, because a lot of people feel so alone and so ashamed. And even though it's so much more spoken of now, with obviously online and social media, and actually I have been really helped by people, because I've done a lot of research over these last years, because more of my son, actually, for different things, bipolar, whatever, and just these people who are struggling. There's one girl, schizophrenic.nyc, man. She is like one of my heroes. Like, she's schizophrenic and she advocates, and she posts like videos, like she posts herself on the couch going, look, this is me having like an episode. I'm talking to like voices, I'm talking to my hallucinations. And then I see the camera. Sees the camera, and then she realizes that it's a hallucination. It's like her way. She's very high functioning. But her whole thing is like, we're not dangerous, we're not violent. Let's break the stigma here, like what we think. I've always had this terror of schizophrenia for some reason, even when I was very young. I don't even know why. Maybe I saw movies, whatever. And she's broken the stigma for me. Like, I realized it's just a person with this brain disease, and she's doing so much great work. And it's not easy, but she's just a conversation. It's not like this hidden, like, don't talk about it. And I've seen a lot of these. And so I just feel like the more people, like I can, and I've, like when I perform now, like I'll mention Lael at one point, not like during my whole set. I'm not trying to bring in, but if it's appropriate, and so a lot of times it is, because I do more like I talk, I tell stories, and and then what? Like recently, I was in England and I just was dedicating a song to Lael. It was the anniversary, and I said, this is my daughter died by suicide 8 years ago, and I said, I just want to just let you all know, like, I'm not saying this for me, just, if anyone out there is struggling, you're not alone. Like, there are people out here who actually really care, and we want to hear your story. We feel you, and there's no shame. Whatever I said, there's
Hmm.
just simple. It's not like I'm gonna be like, you can't, we're gonna stop you. And like people, there were people applauded. Some of them, it was like out in a big festival outside. And he's like, but there was these bunch of young girls right up front, like early 20s. And they wrote me like a few days later, and they were like, thank you. Like, just not about that. They just said, oh, they love the
Right.
show. But you inspire us. But I know that I feel like just that alone, because when I first started saying I'm gonna do this Lael project, I really didn't know. I was like, I'm doing this because now we're rushing in. I know I want the music, but what do I really want out of this? I don't know. I wasn't clear yet. It wasn't like I had this one very specific goal, like I'm gonna do this. And I'm learning as I go. As people interview me, I was interviewed like, here, like talking about it. It's like, because I feel like carrying on Lael's legacy when she wrote that thing. Like, I just want to help one person, which I know is very, it could sound common, cliche, but you know what? One person can hear something that might be like, was just like, oh, even if for that moment, even if
Well,
it's just,
and you don't know that one person, you don't turn something around for that person that ends up inspiring somebody else, or
exactly.
because they meet somebody after that fact that they end up having a kid, and the things continue to grow. You
And we,
don't know.
like you have, like what you're doing here on your podcast, talking about this, you know, I already know, like, even before we started, Lael, is way more than one person. It's not about, obviously it's symbolic. It doesn't matter. It's just, you don't know, and just going to be here. And like, and with your podcast, you're helping people by having these like just honest conversations without some of them, like, I don't say like bullshit, not bullshit, but like just this, like, just, this is real. This is life. This is what it is. This is something that happens, to some people, unfortunately, so let's not like make it like it's not a secret. I mean, listen, everyone's different. Some people don't talk about it. That's their business. If they don't want us to share or talk, that's fine. For me, storytelling, sharing is healing. It heals me. I hope that it heals. Maybe it will heal someone else or help maybe it'll just give someone else the permission to feel like they don't have to keep it in if they don't want to. Some people really don't want to talk about it, right?
Yes.
You hear about these deaths a lot of times, and someone done like, we don't know that no one mentioned how they died, and maybe it's not suicide, maybe it is, but that's just me. That's how I process things. I need to talk. I mean, I'm on stage talking about my life. Everything I do is about,
Yeah.
it's just, it helps me and those that can help, you know. And then through music, of course, like music's beautiful, right? Her music's beautiful. You could hear someone, like my thing is not to depress everyone, like, oh, now this girl is dead, but it's more like, no, you can hear what she struggled with, not only her struggles, her fun stuff. Like I Need a Man, she has this great song. We just re-released it recently. Via Willa, who was I Know How We Met, disco song and just so badass and sassy. And, like it's not just also someone who is suicidal or depressed or mentally ill doesn't have just one, they're
No.
a faceted human being, like with, they're not just this. Like sometimes we just like to, or at least I did, like think of it as one way because it's too complicated to think, oh no, they were also really happy at times. Oh, yeah, she loved that. So why would she kill herself? Because then it confuses people who they want to like put it into this thing. But it's not, none of this is, it's life.
Well, and looking at the songs that you have released, like Do What You Want, Be Who You Are, that was more soulful and moving, where The Good Fight has a little country to it. But and what do I know? All those songs have some truth in them, and they do talk about her struggle.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that is a gift because somebody who is struggling might relate to that. And that's important.
Right. Exactly. And they can hear and go like, and then I don't know if you heard Make You Whole because it's just coming out. And that one was literally written for, because we're releasing it this month. So maybe we'll do the newest stuff. So we haven't re-released. It was a song on her original album, and now we just kind of reimagined a little bit. It wasn't a huge reimagination, but that one was written for a girl who she was in treatment with at 13 years old, who, Lael was there for anorexia. This girl was having psychosis, and, it's turning out that she was sexually abused. And Lael wrote the song in 2013 when she was like 20, but it's a whole song. Like, I mean, if you haven't heard it, if you want, and I'm just saying, if anyone, 2 weeks, if anyone's listening, September 16th, about, or it's actually out already. Just I'm sorry, we're only sick, sick as the secrets we keep, you've kept yours. And I felt like I was thinking about the Epstein people because it's like you're a pawn in their cruel games, and like they kept you so afraid. And just want to, have the chance to say, I'm so sorry. And if I could, I would put the pieces back to you and make you whole. Also hurt knowing that I can't help you. Like if I could, I would, at a young age, understanding that people are going through this pain. And if just know that I care about you, all of you, like we care about each other. And if we could, we do it, but we can't. Sometimes we can without meaning to, but together, I feel like, right, as community,
Hmm.
I was like, together, all of us are broken in some ways. We can be more whole. And I mean, that song always brings me to tears because I hear it obviously towards the girl she wrote it for, but then, over time, it's like I went to a grief group with a bunch of mothers who lost their kids, not only suicide, all different things. And at the end, that's what I wanted to share, just Lael's song. And it sounded like she was saying how she was sorry to all of us mothers, for losing our children. And if I could, I'd pick the pieces up for you, like the compassion and the empathy. And, Lael she really was huge like that. I knew it when she was alive. I think even more I mean, she always would say it almost when she was alive, like, like um, but I see that. So that's with the music. It's like, so for people who can say, yeah, insidious, I get it. This was like on the news side, the insidiousness of mental illness. You think you're doing well, and then all of a sudden it's back. And am I doing it to myself? Like, the words are really like, if anyone would really listen, like she really understood it. And I'm hoping that those who listen might feel heard or seen, and maybe by feeling heard and seen, maybe, like that woman said, Lael saved me, you
Hmm.
know, one of the ones in the client. And she said when she heard that Lael died, one of the one that was in the thing that was like, specifically, it was like, she saved my life. When she heard Lael die, she said, I never even knew about this girl until Lael died. She was like, when Lael died, I put myself on the 72-hour watch because I thought if the person who I think saved my life killed herself, then I can't even survive this. But then somehow when she was in the 72-hour hold, she reframed it to be no, Lael saved me again,
Hmm.
because made me think about it and she wouldn't want this for me. I know she reframed it and she's alive, thank God. Um, so yeah, I know I'm jabbering on and I know sometimes it doesn't seem clear about the Lael Project, but basically it's just the beginning of joining a community of people and just, and I might start this year. I'm thinking, considering, because I have a lot of these young, seems like the universe, whatever we want to call it, I call my team, it's putting a lot of young girls between like the ages of 20 and 35, like, in like around me lately. And then maybe I'm just focused on it more, like I'm connecting with almost like surrogate daughters. I mean, I don't think of them as
Hmm.
my daughters, but I feel like it's been a gift for me to like have these young women in my life and they inspire me. Maybe I inspire them. This may be something, I don't know. We'll see in the Lael Project. Maybe I'd want to, maybe just do some creative work with people, maybe creating, I'm not sure, a retreat kind of thing. I'm not really sure yet that, and I'm just being honest because I believe it's growing organically. I'm not going to force something, you know.
That's the best way.
Yeah. And, and it's just a day at a time. And yeah. And then, and I continue doing my music and the plays and, it's all connected. It's all the same. All my not all my songs. I have a few songs about Lael, of course, over the years. Um, actually, I wrote like an opus on a. It's not out at all, but it's like I one day on the piano, and I don't even play the piano. I mean, I play, but I. It's like almost like based on the day she died, but it's like almost. It's not just. It was like she was like channel. I was like channeling her, her. We'll see. Um, a lot of stuff. So I don't know. That's, I guess, my story. I mean, obviously, I can talk.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to add?
Um, I don't know. Is there anything that you want to ask me? Because I think I've really
No,
filled it, and
I think we've covered pretty much.
we did.
So,
And I
uh,
really appreciate your sharing, with me your story, and I didn't know that actually coming in at all. Um, so I appreciate that, and I feel for you, um, and I know, and I, this with your grandmothers, all of it, just, you know, and I hope you're, and also healing
all
with,
right.
with the chemo and the cancer because you have your life and you're living it and you're doing beautiful things with this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Sure.
The story for Marla is one that is a long journey, and I think that's one of the things what we talked about is the fact that in some cases suicide becomes a mission for the person, and it's an unfortunate thing, but they don't necessarily feel that they can contribute or offer something. And that's unfortunate because life is a gift, but in that token, we also we can't make somebody live a life. They have to be able to be willing to keep going. And sometimes that strength of keep going to see what else is out there, see that next day, you don't have it. You just have to let go. And so the journey for the survivor is one that can be very, I don't want to say perilous, because I remember the first therapist I saw after my mom died, looked at me and looked at my grandmother and said, "Well, you do realize that you're predisposed now to committing suicide." And I just remember going, "I'm leaving. I'm never seeing you again because you can't lump me into that statistic. I am not part of that statistic." And while that may be true for some people, I think it's very irresponsible for somebody to say that just because you know somebody that did it. Now, we do have those people that we have suicide clusters. I'm not going to deny that. But just because somebody does it doesn't mean that their child is going to do it. I saw what ramifications were left. I saw that. And one of those things, especially when I was going through chemo, One of the hardest things for me going through chemo and looking at the state of the world was how do I keep going? How do I keep being motivated? And the big question, I'm sure it's a question for a lot of people that contemplate doing it, is how do I matter? And do I matter? And the fact is, you never know, and we touched a little bit about this. You never know how your message or your life will impact somebody else. And I go back to that car accident that I had in 2012. Had I not dropped something, because every action has a reaction, and had I not dropped that piece of glass off of that doll hutch and it shattered and I wanted to clean it up, we would not have been there when that accident happened. And some people would say, well, that would have been a good thing. But in the roundabout way, when I look at that accident, had we not been there, the person that would have been hit was a kid, and he would have been T-boned by a truck going 60 miles an hour, and the chance of him surviving that would have been slim. So because we were there, and because all those things lined up, we most likely saved that kid's life. So if you think about life in general, that one reaction, that one little action that you've done, sitting here talking about this, or you tuning into the podcast and you know somebody that you're worried about and you're concerned about and you're not sure if they're okay. If this podcast maybe makes you inspired to reach out to that person that seems to be in a dark place, do it, because you never know. I mean, I have a friend whose son, somebody reached out to him that he hadn't seen in 10 years, and he was desperate and he was upset. And his friend talked to him. My friend's son talked to him and got him the help he needed, and he saved him. So if you reach out and you talk to somebody, you have that chance. But you also have to understand that sometimes you can't save somebody no matter how much you want to. And if you are the person that is contemplating this, like I said, think about that moment that can change everything for you. And I'm not saying, you win the lottery, but if you start trying to focus on finding that next moment, that next thing to be excited about, you know, if you have a dog or a cat, think about how much they love you, how much they depend on you, and allow them to help move you and motivate you. And if you can't find somebody to talk to, call an 800 number, a prevention line, because it's a bad day. And I know it's going to be cliche, but it doesn't have to be a bad life, because you never know. And I would tell my mother this all the time. You never know what tomorrow may hold. And understand that and know that, because, yeah, like I said, going through this cancer battle, I was sitting here going, I can't do this anymore. The world is going to crap. What am I going to do? How am I going to survive? And is it worth surviving because the world is turning to shit? But I have to believe that this isn't the end of it. Things will get better. Things eventually will get better. And while it may not be great right now, there's a reason why I'm here going through this. If I believe that the universe, and for some people, God, put me here at this time and I haven't checked out yet, then there's a reason. There's a reason that I'm here. There's a purpose for me to be here. And hopefully, if you're here, you realize that as well. And if it means you being there for somebody to be a sounding board to talk to them, listen, because just because you might not be able to comprehend or understand what they're going through, sometimes them being able to talk about it and reframe it will be just enough for what they need. So, on that note, I would definitely say check out the Lael Project. I'll put the links in the show notes. because the music, it's very diverse. There's a great dance track, I Need a Man, and then there's more soulful things. And all these songs are being re-released. You can find them on Spotify for one. But just because somebody has passed doesn't mean that her legacy can't grow and can't be something more, because she put her heart and soul into this music. And Lael, she really just she does put her heart in there, and you can relate to those struggles because you can feel the emotion in them. So on that note, I'd like to thank Fast Susie for the music that they provided for the intro and outro. I'd like to thank Marla for coming on the show. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the listener, for being here, for tuning in and sticking with me through this whole journey. Um, and I guess I'll check you next time, guys. Bye.